Imagine living with someone for a decade, only to discover they have a second family hidden from you. For Sarah, that's exactly what happened when she stumbled upon a shocking truth that would change her life forever. Her husband, John, had been leading a double life, and Sarah was about to uncover the devastating reality of his secret. As we delve into the story of Sarah and her perfect marriage, you might wonder how someone's life can be turned upside down so completely. But let me tell you, appearances can be deceiving. On the surface, Sarah had it all: a loving husband, 2 adorable kids, and a beautiful home in the suburbs. She was the epitome of a happy homemaker, always cooking dinner for her family and volunteering at school events. In those early years, their marriage was like a fairy tale come true. They met in college, fell deeply in love, and spent countless hours exploring the city together. John was charming, attentive, and made Sarah feel like the luckiest woman alive. As they settled into married life, Sarah trusted him implicitly. She'd often joke to her friends that she could sense when he was stressed or upset, just by looking at him. But we'll soon discover, trust is a fragile thing. The warning signs were there, but Sarah chose to ignore them, blinded by the love and happiness they shared. Little did she know, John's life was about to become a tangled web of deceit and betrayal, one that would change everything forever. As Sarah looks back, she realizes that the warning signs were there all along, subtle hints of infidelity that she had dismissed or rationalized away. There was the phone bill with an unusual spike in data usage, which her husband claimed was due to a work project. But when she asked him about it later, he seemed evasive and changed the subject. And then there were the late-night trips to the gym, which he insisted were just his attempt to get back into shape. But what really caught her attention was a text message from an unknown number. Just 3 words: "I miss you." It was unsigned, but it sent a chill down her spine. Sarah tried to brush it off as a prank or a mistake, but the feeling of unease lingered. She couldn't shake off the sense that something wasn't quite right. As she recalls those moments, she wonders if she should have trusted her instincts and dug deeper. It was a typical Wednesday evening when everything changed for Sarah. She had just finished dinner with her family and was scrolling through social media when she saw a message from an unknown number. The text itself was innocuous, but the tone sent shivers down her spine. "You're not the only one." At first, Sarah thought it was a prank or a spam message, but as she read it again, her mind started racing. Who could be implying that she wasn't the priority in their marriage? The more she thought about it, the more her gut began to twist with unease. It's funny how one sentence can unravel years of trust and complacency. Sarah felt like she was hit by a ton of bricks. Her world suddenly tilted off balance. She couldn't shake off this feeling that something was off, and that message had planted a seed of doubt in her mind. For the first time, she started to question everything. Her husband's late-night phone calls, his business trips abroad, even their seemingly perfect family life. Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. She started by digging through their joint online accounts, searching for any suspicious activity or hidden messages. One night, she discovered a password-protected email on his work computer, which led her to a private account with a username SunsetLoveron123. Her heart racing, she clicked on it and found a string of conversations with someone named Emily. The more she read, the more her gut told her that this was no coincidence. She began to ask direct questions, casually mentioning Emily's name in conversations, seeing how he'd react. At first, he brushed it off as an old friend from high school, but Sarah noticed a hint of nervousness in his eyes. She pressed on, asking about his business trips and what he did during those late nights away. The more she probed, the tighter his responses became. As the tension mounted, Sarah started to notice little white lies, minor fibs that added up to a larger deception. Her instincts screamed at her to keep going, to uncover the truth behind the facade of their perfect marriage. The moment Sarah finally gathered the strength to confront her partner, Mike, about the growing sense of unease in their marriage was one she'll never forget. She walked into their living room, where Mike was sitting on the couch, watching TV like nothing was amiss. But as soon as he saw the look on her face, his expression changed. He stood up, trying to placate her with empty apologies and promises of change. "What's going on?" he asked, but Sarah had already pieced together the puzzle. She handed him a folder filled with receipts, bank statements, and a series of cryptic text messages from an unknown number. Mike's eyes darted back and forth as he realized his secret life was about to be exposed. For a moment they just stared at each other, the tension between them palpable. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Sarah asked, "How could you do this to me?" The room seemed to hold its breath as Mike's face crumpled, and he slumped back into the couch, defeated. As Mike slumped back into the couch, his eyes seemed to glaze over, like he was gazing into a different world. Sarah's mind reeled as she pieced together the fragments of her partner's life with another woman, Rachel. She remembered the business trip Mike had taken last year, when he'd been gone for an entire week. He'd claimed it was a conference in Chicago. But now Sarah wondered if that was just a cover story. The more she thought about it, the more she recalled the strange phone calls he'd receive in hushed tones, always quickly ending with, "I'll call you back later." She remembered the times Mike had disappeared for hours on end, claiming he needed some alone time. But what about the weekends he spent at Rachel's lake house? The ones where he'd returned looking different, his eyes slightly more sunken, his skin a bit paler. Sarah felt like she was living in a nightmare, reliving memories with new, disturbing context. She couldn't help but wonder, how many times had Mike been to that lake house? As Sarah delved deeper into the truth, she began to unravel a web of deceit that went far beyond Mike's affair. She discovered that his closest friends had been complicit in covering up their relationship, manipulating her perceptions, and keeping the secret hidden from prying eyes. It turned out that these so-called friends would often take Mike on solo trips, claiming it was for business or sports, when in reality they were merely providing him with an alibi to visit his mistress. Sarah felt a wave of betrayal wash over her, as she realized that even the people she trusted most had been secretly supporting her husband's infidelity. She recalled a specific instance where one of Mike's friends had accidentally left his car at their house for a week, supposedly because he'd forgotten it was there. But now Sarah wondered if this oversight wasn't just a clever ruse to keep his involvement in the affair under wraps. The more she learned, the more she felt like she was trapped in a twisted game of cat and mouse, with her own partner's friends playing both sides against each other. As I dug deeper into the lives of my partner's second family, I was met with a mix of emotions, guilt, shame, but also love and admiration. His other wife, Rachel, had a kind face and a warm smile, but her eyes told a different story. She had been living in this secret world for years, raising 2 children on her own while my partner played the role of devoted husband to me. What really struck me was their struggles, the constant worry about being discovered, the fear of losing everything they'd built together. I remember Rachel telling me about the time she had to move out of their home abruptly because my partner couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments. She and the kids had to live in a small apartment while he stayed behind in our house, pretending like nothing was wrong. The pain and resilience in her eyes still haunt me today. It made me realize that there's no one-dimensional villain or hero in these stories, just complex human beings trying to survive in a twisted world of deceit. As Sarah sat alone in her darkened living room, the weight of her husband's betrayal crushed her. She thought she knew him, or at least, that's what she kept telling herself. But now, staring blankly at the photo album filled with pictures of his secret family, she felt like a stranger to her own life. The anger and humiliation simmered just below the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. As Sarah looked back on the years they spent together, she realized that her husband's behavior was a constant battle for control. He'd become increasingly paranoid, accusing her of flirting with other men at social gatherings. At first, she brushed it off as insecurity, but in hindsight, it was a classic sign of toxic manipulation. He'd also become dismissive of her emotions, belittling her concerns and making her feel like she was overreacting. But what really stood out was the way he'd changed the subject whenever she brought up their family's future. He'd pivot to his own work stress or complain about her supposed lack of ambition. It was as if he was avoiding any conversation that might lead to real intimacy or connection. Sarah remembers feeling like she was walking on eggshells, never knowing when he'd blow up at her over something trivial. And yet, despite all these red flags, she stayed in the relationship for far too long. Looking back, it's clear that his behavior was a toxic dance, one that left her drained and demoralized. As Sarah navigates the aftermath of her husband's infidelity, she's now faced with the daunting task of divorce proceedings. The courtroom becomes a battleground for the distribution of their assets, including their prized family home on Elm Street. The lawyer explains that, since they're still living in the marital residence, it will be considered joint property, but only until the court makes its final decision. Sarah is torn between fighting to keep the home where she raised her children or accepting a compromise that would give her a fair share of the equity. As Sarah sat in her therapist's office, she felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and a hint of hope. She knew that rebuilding after betrayal wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to move forward. "I want to focus on healing and recovery," she told her therapist. "But it's hard when I'm still feeling so raw." Sarah's eyes wandered around the room as she continued. "I keep thinking about all the times my husband lied to me, all the secrets he kept hidden. It's like a weight is still sitting on my chest." Her therapist nodded empathetically, and Sarah took a deep breath. "What I'm trying to do now is focus on what I can control, myself. I'm taking long walks, practicing yoga, and writing in a journal every day. It's helping me process my emotions and move forward." As she spoke, Sarah's face lit up with determination, and for the first time since her discovery, she felt a glimmer of hope. As Sarah navigated the darkest period of her life, she was fortunate to have a support system that stood by her without judgment. Her close friends, Rachel and Emily, were the first ones she confided in, and they became her rock during this tumultuous time. They listened attentively as she poured out her heart, validating every emotion she felt. "I remember one evening," Sarah recalls, "Rachel brought over a comforting dinner, and we spent hours talking about everything except my husband's infidelity. Emily would often send her motivational texts, reminding her that she deserved love and respect. As I sit here today, reflecting on the journey that Sarah's taken, I'm reminded of a phrase she often used to describe her relationship: love without boundaries. It was this idea that she could love someone so deeply, yet have no control over their actions. She thought that as long as they loved her back, everything else didn't matter. But now, she realizes the devastating truth: that love without accountability is just a euphemism for codependency. Sarah's learned that true love requires vulnerability, honesty, and trust, all qualities that were severely lacking in her marriage. She remembers the countless nights she stayed up late, wondering if her partner was being faithful, only to push those thoughts aside because she didn't want to believe it. She recalls the times Emily would send her motivational texts, reminding her that she deserved love and respect. But Sarah also knows that she had a responsibility to speak up, to communicate her needs and boundaries clearly. Instead, she chose to suffer in silence, hoping that things would magically change. Now, she understands that growth requires acknowledging our mistakes and learning from them. It's not about beating ourselves up over what went wrong. It's about becoming wiser, kinder, and more compassionate towards ourselves and others. As Sarah reflected on her marriage, she realized that the lack of open communication had been a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. She remembered how they used to have deep conversations about their desires, fears, and dreams. But over time, those talks dwindled to mere whispers. The silence grew thicker than the lies her husband was spinning in his secret life. She recalled the countless nights she'd come home from work, exhausted, only to be met with a distant gaze and half-hearted apologies for not being present. The excuses piled up, and so did her doubts. Why didn't he listen to her? Didn't he care about what she had to say? The importance of communication in a relationship cannot be overstated. It's the foundation upon which trust is built, and without it, even the most seemingly secure relationships can crumble. Sarah's story serves as a stark reminder that poor communication can be a warning sign, a beacon flashing red, signaling trouble ahead. As we reflect on our own relationships, let's ask ourselves, are we being honest about what we need? Are we truly listening to each other? You see, when one partner betrays the other, guilt and shame can become a toxic cocktail that fuels the deception. Think about it. The cheater's conscience is screaming at them to confess, but their pride won't let them admit fault. It's like having two opposing voices in your head. The voice of reason, begging for forgiveness, and the voice of self-preservation, insisting on secrecy. Take Rachel's case, for instance. Her husband, Tom, was cheating on her for years, and she had no idea. But what's striking is that even when he got caught, Tom couldn't bring himself to face his wife directly. Instead, he'd make excuses or, worse, blame Rachel for being unfaithful herself. It was as if he was trapped in a web of lies, and guilt was eating away at him. But here's the thing. Guilt can be both motivator and barrier. On one hand, it pushes us to confess our transgressions. On the other, it can paralyze us, making us more likely to continue down the path of deceit. And that's when we need to ask ourselves, what's driving this behavior? Is it a genuine desire for connection or just a desperate attempt to escape accountability? As we delve deeper into the world of cheating spouses, a painful truth emerges. The unseen victims are often the children caught in the middle. Behind closed doors, families crumble, and the innocent suffer silently. I spoke to Sarah, whose mother's infidelity shattered her childhood. I felt like I was living in a war zone, she recalled, where my parents' love for each other seemed to turn into a toxic game of manipulation. The children's needs are often overlooked in the chaos of infidelity. They become emotional caregivers, trying to make sense of their parents' behavior and protect themselves from the fallout. Emily, whose father had an affair, shared her experience. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, never knowing when the next explosion would happen. The vulnerability is palpable in these children's voices. They're not just bystanders. They're living through the trauma of their parents' choices. And as we explore the aftermath of infidelity, it's crucial to acknowledge the unseen wounds inflicted on these young lives. As the dust settled on their marriage's crumbling facade, Sarah found herself at a crossroads. Her husband, John, had been caught in his second affair, leaving behind not just her heartbroken soul but also two young children who called him father. The weight of his betrayal threatened to crush her. Yet, she couldn't shake the memory of their early years together, laughter-filled nights, family vacations, and quiet moments when it felt like they were the only ones in the world. As Sarah grappled with the decision to reconcile or move on, a friend shared a similar story of healing and growth after infidelity. Reconciliation without accountability is just enabling, she cautioned. But what about the love that still lingered? The hope for redemption? Or was it merely a fleeting distraction from the crushing pain of betrayal? For Sarah, the choice became clear. No more pretending, no more hiding behind closed doors. It was time to face reality. John's actions had left an irreparable wound. As she made her decision, Sarah realized that this wasn't just about their marriage. It was about her own worth, her self-love, and her capacity for forgiveness. As Sarah navigated the aftermath of her partner's infidelity, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of betrayal by those she trusted most. His friends. They had been around for years, always included in family gatherings and celebrations. But it turned out, they were secretly complicit in her partner's deception. She remembered how one of them would often drop by their home unannounced, always seeming to drop by on the weekends when she was alone. She realized now that he must have been keeping tabs on her, feeding her partner information about her daily routine. The thought sent a chill down her spine. The pain of losing trust wasn't just about her partner's betrayal. It was also about the people they had surrounded themselves with who had enabled his actions. Sarah felt like she'd lost her support system, and that added to the weight of her grief. She couldn't shake off the feeling that she'd been blind to it all along, or that she'd been living in a state of denial. As she looked back, she remembered the countless times she dismissed her intuition, telling herself she was being paranoid. But now, with the truth out, she knew that her instincts had been screaming for help all along. As Sarah began to rebuild her life, she faced the daunting task of confronting the emotions that had been bottled up inside her for so long. The betrayal still stung, but with each passing day, she felt a sense of clarity wash over her. She started attending therapy sessions, pouring out her heart to a stranger who listened without judgment. It was a small step, but it marked the beginning of her journey towards healing. Sarah would often find herself lost in thought, replaying the memories that had been manipulated by her husband's lies. But she'd catch herself, take a deep breath, and refocus on the present moment. She started to rebuild her sense of self-worth, one small victory at a time, rediscovering old hobbies, reconnecting with friends who had stood by her, and slowly but surely, finding solace in the quiet moments alone. Sarah's story is a testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience and growth. From the ashes of betrayal, she was rising like a phoenix, stronger and wiser with each passing day. As she looked back on the shattering experience that was her marriage's collapse, Sarah realized that in the midst of heartbreak, something remarkable had happened. She'd discovered a resilience within herself that she never knew existed. Like a seedling bursting through concrete, her true self began to emerge. The toxic relationship that once defined her was no more. In its place, she found a sense of freedom and liberation. Sarah's journey taught her that even in the darkest moments, there is always potential for growth. She learned to reframe her experiences as opportunities for self-discovery, rather than just pain. For instance, she started taking art classes, something she'd always wanted to try but never had the courage to pursue. Her newfound passion became a sanctuary from the chaos of her past. As Sarah grew stronger, so did her perspective on life. She began to see that betrayal wasn't an end, but rather a chance to start anew. As Sarah navigated the darkest days of her life, she often found solace in the unlikeliest of places, her family. Her mother, a woman who had always been there for her, became her rock during this time. She'd cook meals, listen to her cry, and offer words of comfort that only a loved one can provide. Sarah's younger sister, too, was a constant presence in her life. The two would spend hours talking about everything from their childhood memories to the pain they were going through. They became each other's support system, offering a perspective on life that no friend could match. The love and acceptance of family members like Sarah's mom and sister gave her the strength to keep moving forward. They reminded her that she wasn't alone in this journey, that there were people who cared for her deeply and wanted to see her heal. And it was precisely that sense of belonging and unconditional love that helped Sarah begin to rebuild her life. As I reflect on Sarah's story, I'm struck by the importance of family in times of crisis. They may not always be there, but when they are, their impact can be transformative. As we reflect on Sarah's journey, one thing becomes clear. Betrayal can leave us feeling lost and alone, but it doesn't have to define us. The weight of secrets and lies can be crushing, but with time, patience, and support, we can begin to heal and rebuild. For Sarah, that meant confronting the reality of her husband's infidelity head-on, rather than running from it. She had to face the pain and anger she'd been suppressing for so long. And in doing so, she discovered a strength within herself she never knew existed. It's a strength we all have within us, waiting to be tapped into when life gets tough. We often think that our relationships are the foundation of our happiness, but what happens when that foundation crumbles? We're forced to rebuild, and it's not always easy. But as Sarah's story shows us, it's possible to emerge stronger on the other side. We don't have to let betrayal consume us. We can use it as an opportunity for growth and transformation. As I look back, I realize that being cheated on was not just about losing my partner, but also about rediscovering myself. The pain and betrayal were overwhelming at first, but with time, I've learned to see the experience as an opportunity for growth. My journey has taught me that strength is not about staying in a toxic relationship, but about having the courage to walk away. To all those who are going through similar struggles, I want you to know that you're not alone. You are strong, capable, and deserving of love and respect. Don't give up hope. Keep moving forward and remember, you got this. Subscribe for more inspiring stories of resilience and strength.